It was a cold, misty morning in late October of 1927. The air over Caddo Lake hung heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and cypress. At Potter's Point, a small fishing community nestled on the banks of this sprawling Texas-Louisiana waterway, something was wrong. 6 men had gone out the night before. They were seasoned fishermen, men who knew the lake's every twist and turn. But they never came home. Their boat, a sturdy vessel named the Hopeful, was found drifting aimlessly near the shore of Goat Island, its engine cold and silent. The scene left behind was more than just unsettling. It was downright bizarre. On the damp wooden seat of the boat, a leather-bound Bible lay open. Its pages were turned to the book of Job, chapter 41. The verses described a fearsome creature, a leviathan rising from the deep. "Canst thou draw out Leviathan with an hook?" the passage read. It was a chilling message, a cryptic clue left in the heart of an abandoned vessel. The men's fishing gear was neatly stowed, their lines unbaited. There were no signs of a struggle, no overturned tackle boxes, no blood. It was as if they had simply vanished into the thick, soupy fog that clung to the water's surface, leaving only a strange and ominous biblical verse behind. The search party that discovered the boat reported other strange occurrences. As they approached Goat Island, they heard unsettling sounds echoing across the water. It wasn't the familiar call of a night heron or the splash of a leaping fish. Witnesses described it as a low, guttural cry, something unnatural that made the hairs on their arms stand up. The sound seemed to emanate from the dense cypress swamps surrounding the island, a place already steeped in local folklore and cautionary tales. The men called out the names of the missing fishermen, but their shouts were swallowed by the oppressive silence that followed each strange cry. Back on the muddy shore of Potter's Point, investigators found another piece of the puzzle. A series of deep, unusual marks were pressed into the soft earth near the water's edge. They weren't footprints, at least not from any man or known animal. They were long, deep gouges, as if something heavy and powerful had been dragged from the land into the dark, murky lake. The tracks led directly into the water and then disappeared, offering no hint of where they came from or what had made them. The combination of the open Bible, the eerie sounds, and these mysterious marks created a scene that felt less like a missing persons case and more like the opening chapter of a terrifying ghost story. The disappearance of the 6 men sent a shockwave through the tight-knit community of Potter's Point. Before that fateful October night, life here was simple, predictable. People knew their neighbors, they shared their triumphs and their struggles. But in the days and weeks that followed, a dark cloud of fear descended upon the town. Doors that were once left unlocked were now bolted shut at dusk. The familiar, friendly greetings between neighbors were replaced with suspicious glances and hushed whispers. Everyone was asking the same question, but no one had an answer. What happened to those men out on the lake? The once bustling shoreline became a place of dread. Caddo Lake, the lifeblood of the community, was now viewed with a new and profound terror. Fishermen who had spent their entire lives on its waters suddenly hesitated to cast their lines. Parents warned their children to stay far away from the water's edge, especially near the foreboding silhouette of Goat Island. The local economy, which relied heavily on fishing and trapping, began to falter. The lake that had always provided for them had seemingly turned against them, swallowing 6 of their own without a trace and leaving a deep, unshakable fear in its wake. This fear began to eat away at the very fabric of the community. Trust eroded. Old friendships frayed under the weight of suspicion. Some people started to believe the wilder theories born from the strange evidence. They spoke of the legendary Caddo critter, a mythical beast said to inhabit the lake's deepest parts. Others wondered if the men had stumbled upon something they weren't supposed to see, something so terrible that it had to be silenced. The lack of answers created a vacuum, and that vacuum was quickly filled with paranoia and speculation, turning neighbor against neighbor in a quiet, desperate search for an explanation. Ultimately, the strain was too much for many. The constant fear, the economic hardship, and the chilling, unanswered questions drove families away from Potter's Point. One by one, homes were boarded up as people sought refuge in other towns, far from the haunting memory of the disappearing fishermen and the dark waters of Caddo Lake. The community that had once been vibrant and resilient began to shrink, its spirit broken. The empty houses stood as silent monuments to the tragedy, a constant reminder of the day the mystery came and tore their world apart, leaving behind a ghost town of fear. The most immediate and heartbreaking impact of the disappearance was felt by the 6 women who were left behind. The widows, as they came to be known, faced a future of uncertainty and profound sorrow. In 1927, in a small rural community like Potter's Point, the loss of a husband meant not just emotional devastation, but also financial ruin. These men were the primary breadwinners, their daily catch putting food on the table and keeping a roof over their families' heads. Overnight, these women were thrust into a desperate struggle for survival, left to raise their children alone while grappling with the crushing weight of their loss. Their grief was compounded by the mystery itself. There were no bodies to mourn, no funerals to provide closure. They were trapped in a painful limbo, unable to fully accept their husbands' deaths, yet unable to hold on to any real hope of their return. The community, while initially supportive, grew distant as fear and suspicion took hold. The widows found themselves isolated, their sorrow a constant, uncomfortable reminder of the darkness that had touched the town. They would gather in quiet solidarity, sharing what little they had and finding solace in their shared predicament, their conversations often turning back to the strange circumstances of that night. These women became the keepers of the story, their memories and observations forming a crucial, if overlooked, part of the historical record. They spoke of how their husbands had been acting differently in the weeks leading up to their disappearance. They had become more secretive, holding hushed meetings late at night. They seemed anxious, constantly looking over their shoulders as if they were being watched. One widow recalled her husband mentioning big city money and the risks involved, but he would clam up whenever she pressed for more details, telling her it was better if she didn't know. Their whispered stories painted a picture that was far more complex than a simple fishing trip gone wrong. They spoke of men who were burdened by secrets, driven by a need to provide for their families in tough economic times. These weren't just fishermen, they were husbands and fathers who may have made a dangerous choice. The widows' accounts, passed down through generations, added layers of intrigue to the mystery. They suggested that the answer wasn't hidden in the jaws of some mythical beast, but in the desperate choices of men caught in a dangerous game, a game that ultimately cost them everything. For decades, the story of the Goat Island disappearance remained a piece of local folklore, a ghost story told around campfires. The official investigation had long gone cold, and the physical evidence was lost to time. But history has a way of holding on to its secrets, tucking them away in dusty attics and forgotten trunks. In the late 1980s, a descendant of one of the Potter's Point families, while cleaning out an old farmhouse, stumbled upon a collection of letters. These letters, written by one of the missing fisherman's sisters to her cousin in another state, provided a stunning new window into the events of 1927. The letters, penned in elegant but faded cursive, began with the frantic news of the disappearance. The early entries were filled with grief and confusion, echoing the sentiments of the entire community. The sister wrote about the strange Bible verse and the marks in the mud, her words conveying the raw terror that had gripped the town. She described the search parties, the false hopes, and the growing sense of despair. But as the weeks turned into months, the tone of her letters began to shift. Her grief was slowly replaced by a dawning, terrible understanding of what might have truly happened out on the lake. In a letter dated January of 1928, she wrote, "They say it was a beast, but I believe it was the beast in men." She spoke of the secret meetings her brother had been attending, mentioning that he and the other men were involved in something not altogether legal. She wrote that they were using their knowledge of the lake's hidden channels and waterways for more than just fishing. They were moving cargo, as she put it, under the cover of darkness. The cargo was fragile, clinking, and immensely profitable. The implication was clear even if she never used the forbidden word. Alcohol. These letters were a revelation. They transformed the 6 victims from simple, hard-working fishermen into players in a much larger, more dangerous world. The sister's writings detailed her growing fear that her brother and his friends had crossed the wrong people. She mentioned rumors of a powerful crime syndicate from Shreveport that owned the smuggling routes on Caddo Lake. Had the men from Potter's Point tried to operate on their own? Had they been caught by rivals? The letters didn't provide a final answer, but they pointed the investigation in a brand new direction, away from folklore and squarely into the violent, high-stakes world of Prohibition-era crime. The trail of clues didn't end with the dusty letters. Decades later, another piece of the puzzle emerged from the Caddo Lake mud. In 2011, during a particularly dry season, the lake's water level dropped to historic lows, exposing parts of the shoreline that hadn't seen the light of day in nearly a century. A local historian, armed with a metal detector and a deep fascination for the Goat Island mystery, was exploring a remote cove not far from Potter's Point. He was drawn to the area by an old family story about one of the fishermen, a man named Silas, who was known to hide his valuables near the water. His metal detector screamed to life near the gnarled roots of an ancient cypress tree. After hours of careful digging in the thick, clay-like mud, he hit something hard and metallic. He unearthed a heavily rusted padlock toolbox. The lock was corroded shut, but with considerable effort he managed to pry it open. Inside, preserved in a surprisingly dry oilcloth-wrapped bundle, was a collection of items that had been hidden away since 1927. The contents of this time capsule offered a direct and tangible link to the secret lives of the 6 missing men. The toolbox contained several items. There was a small, leather-bound ledger filled with cryptic entries, dates, quantities, and monetary figures listed next to initials. The numbers were far too large to be from the sale of fish. There was also a detailed hand-drawn map of Caddo Lake. This map was different from any standard navigational chart. It showed hidden, shallow water passages, secret coves, and designated drop-off points, many of them located in the labyrinthine swamps around Goat Island. It was a smuggler's map, a blueprint for moving illicit goods undetected through the maze-like waterway. Most tellingly, the box held a small stack of newspaper clippings. They were all from 1926 and 1927, and they detailed the recent, violent takedown of a major bootlegging operation in East Texas by federal agents. Several articles mentioned the leader of the busted gang by name, a notoriously ruthless figure who had escaped capture. The presence of these clippings suggested the men from Potter's Point were not just casual participants, they were students of the game. They were aware of the risks, the key players, and the brutal consequences of getting caught, either by the law or by their even more dangerous competitors. The toolbox wasn't just a collection of objects, it was a survival kit for a smuggler, and its discovery proved their secret was real. To truly understand what might have happened to the 6 men, we have to look at the world they lived in. The year 1927 was deep in the heart of the Prohibition era. The nationwide ban on the production and sale of alcoholic beverages had created a massive and massively profitable black market. For criminal organizations, bootlegging was a goldmine. For ordinary people facing hard times, it was a tempting, high-risk, high-reward opportunity. Caddo Lake, with its strategic location on the Texas-Louisiana border and its confusing network of backwaters, was a perfect superhighway for smugglers. The men from Potter's Point were skilled boatmen. They knew the lake better than anyone, including the federal revenue agents or revenuers, who were tasked with enforcing the unpopular law. For them, smuggling wasn't just about greed, it was about survival. The fishing industry was unreliable, and the promise of big city money, as one of the widows had recalled, would have been nearly impossible to resist. They likely started small, moving a few crates for an established gang. But the ledger in the toolbox suggested their operation had grown. They were becoming more organized, more ambitious, and therefore more of a threat. This secret enterprise put them in a perilous position, caught between 2 powerful and unforgiving forces. On one side were the rival bootlegging gangs. The smuggling territories around Caddo Lake were fiercely contested. Larger, more violent syndicates from cities like Shreveport and Dallas did not tolerate freelance competition. If a small, independent crew like the Potter's Point fishermen started cutting into their profits or using their routes, the response would have been swift and brutal. In the world of bootlegging, disputes weren't settled in court. They were settled with violence, and bodies often disappeared into the very same waters used for transport. On the other side were the lawmen. While many local sheriffs might have turned a blind eye, federal agents were a different story. They were under immense pressure to crack down on the illegal liquor trade. Raids were common, and they could be violent. An armed confrontation with a team of determined revenuers in the dead of night was a very real possibility. The men from Potter's Point were navigating a treacherous path, with the threat of a gangster's bullet on one side and a federal prison sentence on the other. Their fishing boat, the Hopeful, was a cover for a much more dangerous nocturnal business. With the revelation of their smuggling activities, the mystery of the six fishermen shifted. The question was no longer if they met with foul play, but at whose hands. Several compelling theories emerged, each one plausible within the violent context of the Prohibition era. The evidence, from the open Bible to the smuggler's map, could be interpreted to support different scenarios, leaving investigators, both amateur and professional, to debate the most likely chain of events that unfolded on that foggy October night. The first and most widely accepted theory is a fatal confrontation with a rival gang. The men from Potter's Point may have grown too bold, encroaching on territory controlled by a more powerful syndicate. Perhaps they were ambushed at a prearranged drop-off point near Goat Island. The strange cries heard by the search party could have been the shouts of men being attacked. In this scenario, the perpetrators would have had every reason to make the bodies disappear permanently in the vast lake, leaving behind a clean boat to delay suspicion. The open Bible, pointing to the Leviathan, could have been a chilling, symbolic message from the killers, a warning to others about the monsters that lurk in the business of smuggling. Another strong possibility involves a deal gone wrong. The ledger in the toolbox showed transactions, but what if one of those transactions went sour? The fishermen could have been meeting with either their suppliers or their buyers. An argument over payment, the quality of the moonshine, or a perceived betrayal could have easily escalated into violence. The strange marks in the mud could be evidence of bodies being dragged to a boat to be disposed of far from the scene of the crime. This theory suggests an internal implosion of their own network, a deadly dispute among thieves in the night. A third theory points the finger at law enforcement. While less likely to involve a deliberate massacre, a botched raid by federal agents is not out of the question. In the darkness and fog, a surprise encounter could have led to panic and gunfire. The agents, realizing they had killed 6 men, who were, after all, local family men, might have engaged in a cover-up to avoid a scandal. They could have sunk the bodies in a deep part of the lake and fabricated a story of the men escaping. While this theory is more speculative, corruption and cover-ups were not unheard of during the chaotic years of Prohibition. The mystery's endurance is fueled by the fact that any of these scenarios fits the grim puzzle. The mystery of Goat Island lay dormant for many more years, a cold case gathering dust. The letters in the toolbox had provided context, but they hadn't solved the crime. Then, in 2018, modern science offered a potential breakthrough. A team of researchers from a Texas university was conducting a comprehensive sonar scan of Caddo Lake, creating a high-resolution 3-dimensional map of the lakebed for an environmental study. They weren't looking for evidence of a century-old crime, but their advanced equipment revealed something that decades of searching had missed. In a deep silt-filled section of the lake, about 2 miles from Goat Island, their sonar picked up an unusual anomaly. It was a large, rectangular object, almost completely buried in the mud. It had the distinct shape and size of an early 20th century automobile, specifically a Ford Model T. This was a stunning discovery. While finding old cars in lakes is not unheard of, the location was significant. It was in a remote area, far from any old roads or ferry crossings. There was no logical reason for a car to be there, unless it had been put there deliberately. This discovery breathed new life into the smuggling theory. During Prohibition, smugglers often used cars to transport their illicit cargo to and from the remote drop-off points along the lake. It's plausible that the fishermen were meeting a contact who had arrived by car. A confrontation could have occurred right at the water's edge. If a rival gang or law enforcement ambushed the meeting, they would have needed to get rid of all the evidence, not just the men, but their vehicle and any illicit cargo it contained. Sinking the car in the deepest part of the lake would have been a brutally effective way to erase all traces of the crime. While the car has yet to be excavated, a costly and complex undertaking given its depth and the fragile condition it's likely in, its presence provides a tantalizing piece of physical evidence. It aligns perfectly with the narrative of a smuggling deal gone horribly wrong. The location of the sunken vehicle, far from Goat Island, suggests the perpetrators went to great lengths to cover their tracks, moving evidence far from the initial crime scene. The sonar image of that submerged Model T serves as a ghostly tombstone, a silent testament to the violent night that has haunted Caddo Lake for nearly a century. Today, as the mists continue to roll across the dark waters of Caddo Lake, the disappearance of the 6 fishermen from Potter's Point remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of the American South. We stand on the shoulders of decades of discovery. We have the whispers of the widows, the confessions in the forgotten letters, the secrets of the smuggler's toolbox, and the ghostly sonar image of a sunken car. We have moved beyond the folklore of lake monsters and stepped into the real, violent world of prohibition. We can say with near certainty that these men were involved in a dangerous game. Yet for all that we know, the core questions remain unanswered. Who were they meeting that night? Was it a rival gang enforcing their territory? Was it a law enforcement raid that ended in tragedy and a cover-up? Or was it a simple deal that soured, leading to a cascade of violence under the cloak of darkness? The Bible left open to Job 41, was it a cryptic message from the killers, a symbol of their own monstrous power? Or was it a final, desperate prayer from the victims as they faced their doom? Each clue opens a new door, but behind each door is another hallway of questions. Perhaps this is why the story continues to captivate us. It's a reminder that the past is never truly dead. It's just buried, waiting for a drop in the water level or a curious historian with a metal detector. The mystery of Goat Island is a tapestry woven from threads of truth, folklore, and speculation. It speaks to our fascination with the unknown and our innate desire to solve the puzzles that history leaves behind. It's a testament to the fact that sometimes, even when you have most of the pieces, the full picture remains just out of reach, obscured by the passage of time. Some mysteries are not meant to be fully solved. Their power lies not in the answer but in the questions they force us to ask. They become legends, cautionary tales that echo through generations, becoming part of the identity of a place. The 6 fishermen who vanished in 1927 are no longer just names on a missing persons report. They are ghosts of the past, their story forever entwined with the cypress roots and murky depths of Caddo Lake. And as long as the fog gathers over Goat Island, their silence will continue to speak volumes, challenging us to keep searching, to keep wondering, and to never stop exploring the unknown.